Welcome to Trial by Wine. We take a closer look at crimes that highlight how fascinating humans can be. Schmidty, Swanee and Clarkey visit crimes and run them through their jury of 3, debating both sides of the case to agree an appropriate, if totally fictitious, sentence. Please be advised, Trial by Wine may include explicit or disturbing content and will include drunken rambling. Listener discretion is advised. All right, how are we?
Not too bad, thank you. How are you guys?
Good.
Super duper.
Yeah. I don't have much news since the last time we met.
Well, the Olympics has finished. I think that's the big news,
Is it?
right?
I did.
Yeah.
So-
Thank God, not all that shit in my Facebook feed anymore.
Well, no, the big news from the Olympics is, of course, Ray
Is this
Gun,
the penis
the
guy?
Aussie breakdancer.
No.
I saw.
Schmidty, where have you been? Under a
No, I
rock?
saw someone put
I
it.
know,
Someone put,
what?
and it was probably put to music. It was probably hilarious. But I just saw
Yeah,
this
yeah, yeah.
person flopping around on the floor, and I thought,
Oh, fantastic.
is that breakdance? But it doesn't look like breakdance of my youth. It was quite different. It was quite a performance from what I saw.
Yeah, so apparently she was going for the creativity.
I saw it in real time. So because I'm
Did
in
you?
WA, yes, I must be one of the few people who did. So on Friday night, I haven't watched much of it. And to be honest, I've hardly seen anything live because of the time or whatever else. So I had the TV on like my mum used to during the Olympics. So if I walk in, I pick up bits and pieces. Anyway, I sat down in front of the TV and it was during one of those interviews that they do, usually about a month or so out back in Australia. You know, it's usually set to some beautiful music and there'll be some hardship or there's some story there. Anyway, so I'm watching and thinking, what sport? What sport does this woman do? What? Anyway, then she said, oh, well, I did my thesis on breakdancing. And I was like, I don't understand what and I was thinking, she's going to breakdance? Anyway, so then they talked about it a little bit more. So, my partner got me into it. She was sort of all doe-eyed, but she was sort of talking about here. Then I must have left the room, put a load of washing on, come in. And as I've entered the room, there were like the hype guys trying to get the people ready, like on the, I don't know what you call it, mat or stage or whatever.
Floor.
And I thought, oh, this feels a bit awkward. And I could only see the other girl that it was like her competitor at that point. I thought, oh, this feels a bit, I don't know, staged, for want of a better word. And then out comes Ray Gun. And I literally went like this. I remember going, oh, what is she wearing? Because my first thing was like, what? Why is she in like a full, fuck it. I couldn't make the match, but a cricket gear. She's like a full Australian cricket team. She's did a one day or
Seriously,
the other.
that was part when I looked at it, I thought, what is she wearing? Breakdancers don't wear that.
That was the first thing. Before she even started, I went, oh, that looks like some woman who I've seen down the supermarket in a full tracksuit, like middle-aged kind of woman. And then she started and I went, oh, I don't know what it looked like. This is like watching Chris Lilly skit in real time. So I turned it off. Anyway, then I didn't think much more of it. And the next morning, we're on a chat with two friends in particular. One of the husbands just watches loads of stuff. He and I are often sending stuff, we see online. And I just sent him a text in the morning, having not seen anything yet, going, don't suppose either of you had the misfortune of being up at 10:20 last night when Dr. Ray Gun, because she's a doctor, she's got a doctorate in, or a thesis, or, she's breakdancing. Anyway, then from then it's just been an avalanche of Kath Day Knight, Chris Lilly, Elaine Bennis, everything you can think of. It is, it just went so terribly wrong. And
So fast forward back in the day, did this series of skits on an Australian gymnast named Berolina Stumpy from Maui. And honestly, she does. So when she does tumble turns at the gymnastic, instead of doing tumble turns, she does these things and just totally pretends that she's doing it. And she goes to do the rings and she can't quite reach them. So she just ends a skit with not even reaching the rings. And, it's just the ribbon. She gets tied up in the ribbon and to the point where she's all wrapped up and can't move anymore.
It was like there was
I just can't stop thinking about that
series of things ready to roll out because we've been mocking this so much before it even happened. And that's another one. Yes. So I didn't know. Do you know who Pat Mullins is? So my girlfriend sent one back saying, I think she's like, it's an ode to an Australian athlete, Pat Mullins. And I thought, who's Pat Mullins?
So you Googled it.
And then forgot about it. And then later in the day, Chris Lilly posted a thing where he had a series that I hadn't seen. All of my family were living overseas. And Pat Mullins is a roller. She was going to roll from Perth to she had a coach, and that's what she was like, this middle-aged woman. She was Pat Mullins roller. It sounds like Berolina Stumpy, whatever it is called.
Berolina Stumpy, yeah.
Exactly the same thing where it's just some mock kind of situation where, something that's not a sport, Lots of Aussie-isms in the whole thing. Oh, my God. Berylina Stumpy and Pat Mullins and Kath Day-Knight.
Pat Mullins, perfect.
I wouldn't have done it, but fair enough. I'm also 50.
Yeah, I'm not sure whether I'm dissing her or loving her. I can't quite work it out in
In
my
fairness,
head.
I don't have the strength to do those moves either, so I probably would have relied on creativity also. Well, I suppose we should introduce ourselves. I'm Schmidty.
I'm Swanee.
And I'm Clarky. And together we are
Trial by Wine.
And what are we drinking?
Oh, nothing exciting for me. I'm just on a little soda.
Lovely. Refreshing.
Oh, nice. The raspberry one.
Yep, that's all we ever have.
We've got a bit of a carryover a hangover from our colds of last week, so you can probably hear it in my voice. So we're having a scotch and soda with a dehydrated lemon that one of our neighbours brought down for us.
They're good,
Lemon
aren't they?
around.
We've got them given to us now, some orange and stuff. I'm thinking, I wonder what they'd be like. I was surprised at how much flavour they gave a drink as opposed to like fresh. They're pretty impressive, hey?
I am drinking more of the alcoholic ginger beer from Brookvale Union that was left over from my party because it was there. Shall I tell us a story?
Please do.
Please do.
Okay, so I came across this story about a year ago, but the story itself was in flight, so it was breaking headlines, breaking news. So I waited for the legal process to take place, and it pretty much completed this year, and it has been on my list of things to look at, and it's now time. And in fairness, this whole story interested me because of how ironic it is, really. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Don't you think?
Don't you think?
Oh, true.
Yeah, so...
Yeah.
Is it like a black fly in your Chardonnay, or is it more ironic than that?
It's like a black fly in your Chardonnay. Well, that's not irony. That's just shit. In fact,
That's
I don't
annoying.
think
rain on your wedding
I don't
day.
think
Not
any
ironic.
of it's ironic, but but we love
That's
you,
the
Alanis.
joke,
We
isn't
love
it?
you.
No.
Yes, I do. I think I like them more now.
Yeah, I think this one really is irony, though. I think it is. So this is the story of Ruby Franke and her rise and very dramatic fall. If my mum were alive, she'd have a lot to say about this one. We all know she had some very strong views about us doing the podcast, not of the supportive type either, which I always found funny given she didn't actually listen to any of them. My sources are marieclaire.com.au, YouTube, Law and Crime Network, Wikipedia, abc.net.au, thecut.com, biography.com, distractify.com, thebbc.com and rollingstone.com. And in fairness, I did originally come across this when I was just looking at YouTube. I was just scrolling on the TV and there was all these stories about this woman and I was like, what's this? So, as I'm sure, Swanee, you know this one. But Clarky, are you across Ruby Franke and her business partner, Jodie Hildebrand?
They're related to Ruby Tuesday.
No.
I know the story, Schmidty, but I didn't know, I was not aware of them before that.
No, I'd never heard of them either, yeah.
I'd never heard of them.
But then I
had no idea.
I think they're probably more American, as in popular in America.
Totally.
So Ruby was born in Utah in January 1982. She was raised a Mormon and met Kevin Franke, who'd been a professor of engineering at Brigham Young University, which is where they met and married in 2000. And the couple had 6 children between March 2003 and September 2013. So 6 in 10 years. Now, you would think raising 6 kids would keep her pretty busy. But in 2015, Ruby and her husband started a YouTube channel called 8 Passengers, which basically video chronicled their life raising 6 kids as devout members of the Church of Jesus Christ of the Latter-day Saints. Though Kevin popped up a bit in the videos initially, he wasn't really present in it too much. So it's really driven by Ruby, and Kevin was just sort of a passenger on 8 Passengers. 8 Passengers was a pretty good channel, earning good money for Ruby. At its height, it had 2.6 million subscribers. Ruby was very much positioned as a mummy vlogger, sharing her parenting tips and approach with literally millions of people. She didn't just talk about her parenting, though. She commoditized her children. From what I could see, though the channel has been taken down, she filmed them constantly. They were absolutely used as content for years on the channel. I'm sure you'd have views on whether this is good or not, and I think I know where you're likely to land. She said, "It became apparent to me very quickly that people were interested in how to respond to their children. It became, for me, a platform of teaching, demonstrating mothers in action, powers of mothers."
In action or mothers in action?
Mothers in action.
Like the inactivity of mothers? Mother, okay.
In space action, yeah.
Just checking. Just checking.
Now, we certainly have covered enough cases where mothers and their powers have made serial killers, but that's another story. What gets me the most about this is the hubris. To create a channel and serve it with hours and hours of parenting advice, setting yourself up as a gold standard as to how to raise your kids and then have it turn out the way it does. It's Frankie staggering.
I see what you did. Well done. Points for creativity, unlike Ray Gun.
0 points.
Nil point.
What?
Not everyone was loving Ruby's child management, though. Some noticed that her approach was pretty extreme. She very much talked about setting her kids up for adulthood by holding them accountable for themselves, including her youngest, who, when in kindergarten, forgot to make her own lunch. Ruby decided not to make her any food or go over and sort it out and said, "I hope no one will give her anything, so she'll learn what it meant when you didn't do what you meant to."
When she's in kindergarten.
So kid had been told you have to make your own lunch,
early.
and she knew she had to make her own lunch, and she didn't make her own lunch, and so she's just got to learn.
Oh, sorry, my mistake. That's fair then. As long as she was told.
Yeah.
Jesus.
Mean old bitch.
I was totally motivated to do that kind of stuff in kindergarten. Actually, the whole way through school.
And it was one of those videos, you know, she's sitting in a car and the phone's on the dash or something, probably on a little holder. And she's like, "Yeah, so I've had a call from the kindergarten and kid hasn't made her lunch and she's just going to have to learn. And I hope no one helps her out because, you know, she's never going to learn if she that she's supposed to do what she's supposed to do if people help her out." I'm like, what is she, 3 or 4? Anyway.
Yeah, I don't have time to resolve this problem, but I do have time to blog about it.
Yes, I've got plenty of time to share this because this is my great parenting. Okay, so she did this with one of her sons as well, same sort of thing, but she films herself on the phone to him, telling him that if he doesn't take responsibility of his lunch money or lunch order, he'll either have to get something off someone else or just go hungry until he gets home. At the end of that clip, she says to the camera, he sounded like he was going to cry. Now, on the one hand, this might seem like a big deal.
Wacky.
This could be a single activity, like so taken out of context and said she does this all the time, but it might have just happened once.
Yeah, in isolation.
In isolation, thank you.
Yeah.
However, her need to control and being weird about food is pretty much a theme that runs through a lot of her videos. So she got the kids to line up. At one point, she's got this thing where she's got, I think, her nephews are over, and she says something on the video like, "Oh, I've got to give these kids something good to eat before we go somewhere," or something. She gets one banana, and she makes all the kids line up and walk up and take one bite of the banana, and that's all they get as they go through.
Just a quick snack, everyone.
Yeah, everyone, let's have some wholesome food. You can have a bite of banana, which is weird. She repeatedly talks about starving them or not feeding them until they get their chores done. Yeah, and this is me making an assumption here, but she's quite a slim woman herself. And at one point, she's talking to one of her kids who was preteen at this point, you know, sort of 13, and a female, and said, "You're too old now for sweets. You're too old for that because, you know, basically you're going to get too fat."
What?
So
was the kid older than me?
No, she's like probably 12.
Because I feel like I'm not too old for sweets yet. I'm just trying to work out if that's coming or whether I'm past the worst of it and I can keep eating sweets.
That whole kind of thing of, you know, you're at an age now where you're just going to get fat, so you can't eat that anymore, darling.
Does she have a really unhealthy relationship with food herself?
It'll all be about control.
It's definitely about control. I didn't see any evidence that she has an unhealthy relationship with food, but I did jump to the conclusion that she probably does.
These kids will have an unhealthy relationship with food. Jeez.
In fact, my next line is there's a lot of this sort of content about food being an issue and a means to control or punish the kids and as leverage to get them to do all the housework. The thing I don't understand is how a mother doesn't understand the importance of food for kids at school. If they don't eat, they can't concentrate.
Can you do housework on an empty stomach? I feel like you'd want to have a bit of snacks in your guts.
I think you'll find as this story rolls on, you can do a lot on an empty stomach.
I mean, yes, right. Good point.
It wasn't just food that she used to control or punish them. Her eldest boy in one video is telling the viewers about how she took his room away from him for 7 months.
How old do you reckon he
At
would
that
be?
time, I
Schmidty?
think he was
Like
about
still
15.
under 10 or 10. Oh, okay, so really mid.
He's the oldest kid.
What did she offer as an alternative,
He
though?
slept on a beanbag in, I think, in the lounge room for 7 months.
And what did that teach him?
For 7 months.
And he's to go to a physio.
Well,
but
the
what did
thing
it teach him?
is, he says himself, I'm not even sure what I got in trouble for. He's not even sure what he was punished for. He knows it's a punishment.
But why is that recorded?
Everything's recorded.
And where was it shared?
On YouTube, on 8 passengers. And she's laughing. They're sitting in a row leaning on a wall or something. And the kid's going, oh, you know, I got my room taken off me for 7 months and I had to sleep on a beanbag in the lounge room. And he's like, I'm not even sure what I did. I think it was this other thing. And she's sort of sitting there going, yeah, haha, isn't that funny? Yeah, you did. Yeah, well, you know, you got to learn.
Didn't I show you? Yeah.
And it turns out he played a prank. He played a prank on one of his younger brothers, saying that he woke him up in the night and he said, we're going to Disneyland, quick. Pack, get ready, we're going to go to Disneyland. So the kid gets up, packs a bag, gets really excited and, you know, puts his sunglasses on and he's walking out, and obviously they weren't going to Disneyland. And obviously the older boy thought it was a pisser of a thing to do. But she never actually told the kid why he was in trouble, and that's what he was in trouble for. So while she's sitting next...
So how did she resolve when it was time not to...
I'm not sure. Probably
to give him his room back? Because did he wear her down?
On a whim?
Probably when she was sick of him being in the bedroom, in the lounge room, on a whim. I think on a whim is probably correct.
I want to watch TV now and you're in the way, so can you go back to your room?
Yeah. And the funny thing, so as I said, they were sitting like leaning, it looked like they were leaning on a fence or a wall or something, and they were sort of having a bit of a joke. And he's laughing about this situation, like, you know, thinking it's quite funny, particularly the prank that he played on his brother. And she turns around and she's like, oh, so you still think that's funny, do you? Well, maybe you need some more time on the beanbag. Maybe you haven't learned your lesson. And, yeah, he didn't even know what was going on. He just got chucked out of his room.
Again, in isolation, that might be funny, but...
Having a 15-year-old child sleep on a beanbag, there's no upside as a parent to that either.
No, that's a good point.
It would be their demeanour, the smell. I mean, everything is just not right.
Everything.
Just not right.
Punishing everyone in the house.
They need to be put in a room and they need to be sleeping the time that they need out of sight, really.
Grumpy teenager the next morning.
There seems to be a bit of a level of humiliation. That's, you know, as a parent, like I rip it to my kids all the time. They're always in trouble and there's stuff going on. But kids can smell when you're losing control pretty quick. Certainly mine do. If I'm like, you know, they can outsmart me or they're whatever else. If I, you know, try to introduce threats, and I'm never going to go through with that kind of stuff. They're just sort of like, oh, please, you know, really, you think you're going to do that? But this idea of including humiliation to a 15-year-old boy sleeping in a common area, it's not. There's other things that are involved in that are just not pleasant. You know what I mean? It's again control and keeping someone where you want them to feel small or out of control.
From a scarring perspective, that'd be worse than a smack too, wouldn't it? Like, you know, we talk about you're not allowed to smack kids.
Yeah.
That could have long-term impacts on the poor kids.
Absolutely. I mean, to what you said before about in isolation, it seems funny. I mean, 7 months is a long time, but it's a bit the same as...
No, but that's what I mean. If you didn't know that and it was just that...
Yeah, you'd be like...
You know, do you want to go back and sleep on the beanbag?
Initially, when you're looking at some of her videos and this stuff from 8 Passengers, you get this sort of like, she's a bit odd. The kids are sort of seem all right. They're laughing around about it. And you sort of think, are these just moments in time that in isolation, like they could be terrible, but they probably aren't?
Yeah. I think you'd have to think that to start with, because it's sort of like as an audience, and I can't remember how many, you said 2-point-something million subscribers or people who, that's actually who pays, is it not just even the audience? God. Or followers probably followers versus subscribers.
I don't know how it works. Yeah.
Anyway, but she's obviously they're making enough money out of it. But I don't know, like at what point do you think in her brain she's going, oh, I think they need more of that style content where I'm making my kids the butt of, not really the butt of a joke, but kind of, if she's laughing and sniggering when she's talking about these punishments that she's put in place. It's kind of a weird form of entertainment. I know she thinks she's probably teaching somebody about parenting, but it is a bit odd, isn't it?
It is odd.
That worry that she thinks she knows and she's coming from a place of expertise.
Yeah.
While she's just being a shit mum.
Yep. So she also took away their devices when she thought they were naughty, which is, you know, not That
I have no
yes,
issue
that's
with.
not that unusual. And in that same clip where they were talking about the bedroom removal, when the other kids actually start talking about how they've got no friends because she won't let them see any of their friends or go and do anything. She doesn't, at this point, she doesn't respond like that's a problem. She's like, oh, well, that's a consequence of you being a dick. So tough.
It's on you.
So that eldest boy, and I'm kind of not talking about the children by name on purpose, but for someone who's so good at parenting her kids, it was interesting that she sent the eldest boy off to a wilderness camp to help with his behavioural issues for 10 weeks. And he just pretty much got back from that camp when he played the prank on his brother. And from what I could tell from this guy, he was a pretty normal teenage boy living in this unnecessarily over-controlled environment by this uptight mother. The father, you don't see much about. There's not much about the father, Kevin. I think he's working or something. He's doing something else. I don't think he's paying a lot of attention. But Kevin did advocate this wilderness camp because they both said they wanted their kids to have resilience and to be able to deal with life's issues. But I wonder whether or not you need to make issues for them to learn from them, or you help them learn from issues that come up naturally. Do you need to remove all their confidence and break them down totally for them to be magically resilient? Because that's precisely what seemed to be the approach from mummy vlogger Ruby.
It also depends on the severity of the crime. Like if they've been told to take their lunch or make their lunch for Kinder and they haven't, well, you probably do need to break them down like that because that's super serious, right? I mean, she's not even getting something. It's not like there's something big going on that she's then got to really punish them for. She's getting the smallest little thing that is
infractions,
super unreasonable as a
infractions.
parent of a kid of that age and making them suffer for it.
Yep.
Awful.
And as I mentioned earlier, this is pretty much the perfect approach to creating a serial killer. Although there's no proof of animal abuse from any of these children.
Have we got that to look forward to by the end of this podcast?
We'll find out. Fast forward 20 years from now, we'll find out. Probably not. This is all around in 2019, so it's all very recent. And by this time, Ruby had met and was dealing with a woman called Jodie Hildebrand, who was a counsellor who specialised in addictions. She was also likely the person who suggested their eldest boy be sent to that wilderness camp. And, you know, the camp was the sort of thing you see on reality TV shows where troubled teens are sent off to help them heal from mental and behavioural issues in an outdoor setting. And I'm not sure how regulated these camps are, and I have no doubt some of them are not great and some are. By 2020, people were pretty sure that Ruby Franke was a child abuser, and someone must have reported her as the CPS visited the Franke house in Springville. However, of course, no charges were filed.
Do you think that was from the online community, Schmidty, or from someone locally, or from the content that she was posting, or is there an idea where it came from?
I know for a fact that her eldest daughter reported her at some point, and some of the neighbours, but also I believe some people who were viewing reported it.
Okay.
Yeah. And what had happened was the CPS showed up and possibly some police, and the kids wouldn't come out and talk to them. Ruby's view of this was that the CPS and the police were so impressed by her parenting
that she had more content.
She says that they asked her for tips on how they could go and manage their children more effectively. Yeah, sure. Yeah, but that's what happened, yeah. And yes, when you film everything and you put it all out there, people are bound to notice what you're doing. And the beautiful thing about YouTube and TikTok creators is that they too can call out what they are seeing, which pretty much got Ruby and her channel cancelled. Ruby, of course, blamed this on a bunch of naughty kids who thought tough love would become the norm because of her great work. So they went out of their way to troll and destroy her on the internet.
Tough kids.
Yep, these kids, these naughty kids
with a mission.
Yeah, they don't.
I wonder how many months they'd be on the beanbag for if she got to punish them.
I suspect it was more like adults watching in horror as this woman went about publicly abusing her kids in the name of resilience building. Now, of course, having her channel cancelled meant she lost a lot of money. Sponsorships were a huge part of the business, and of course, once people were hating on her and her ways, the advertisers noticed that her subscribers were getting low. They watched the content and thought, time to distance ourselves.
Are we really advertising on this?
Could we have perhaps looked at this a little earlier? Oh, no, she had so many, the numbers were good, so who cares, right?
Yeah, pretty much.
Who the hell put us onto this? Oh, it was the intern. They're not here anymore.
So by 2021, she was not posting as frequently, certainly not daily. And then by 2022, she stopped posting at all. She got off YouTube to save her kids. That's what she told everyone.
Right, of course.
So in a video where she's sitting next to Jodie Hildebrand, she was telling everyone that I got off YouTube to save my kids. I was making millions of dollars, but I got off YouTube because of, I can't remember. She's boring. The haters or whatever. Jodie Hildebrand at this point, I think, is now her business partner, and you'll enjoy this. They start a new chapter in their lives, a new business, and it's called Connections with an X. CONNEXIONS. Connections.
Brilliant.
So now this is when they start talking about standing in truth with a capital T. And Ruby pays, I think, about $10,000 to Jodie to get her minimal training so that she can call herself a life coach. And again, the irony. You shouldn't be anyone's life coach, bitch. Anyway, so Connections was a training platform. Read Cult, if you like, because it's not far off.
Yeah.
It was a bit like NXIVM.
Sounds like that.
It's got the NXIVM vibe about it. So they're teaching true connections with others. You can't be in distortion. Being in distortion, defined by Jodie, means being addicted to anything. Living in shame or denial, knowing you're not enough, being codependent in relationships, living in lust. And this bit got me. Being sexually attracted to your spouse. I would think most people would think being attracted to their own spouse is a good thing. I'm not quite sure why that's being in distortion. So you're not supposed to fancy the person you're married to.
Oh, that's weird. I would have thought that's this.
No, and controlling and manipulating others. And I think that is not a mistake. I think that is true, and I'll talk about that in a minute. She says if you have to cut people off, people in distortion, you've got to cut them off. If they're not behaving the way you know that you have to be, get rid of them. If you're not in your truth, cut them off. And as I alluded to earlier, this story could be a basis for a reboot of Alanis Morissette's song. All the elements of it. So Jodie, who was a practicing and licensed psychologist and counsellor, but she had a little bit of trouble back in 2012. Apparently she blabbed about one of her clients to his Latter-day Saints leader and some people at the uni, and her license was put on probation. So Jodie was a counsellor. She shared client confidentiality stuff with people.
Right, okay.
Got in trouble. The client had gone to her. Oh,
that's weird.
And this is where I say, you're not allowed to be sexually attracted to your partner. The client who had gone to her for marriage counselling was quoted as saying, she spent hardly any time knowing about my life. She didn't want to talk about my personal goals or progress. She would only threaten that if I didn't take more sessions and have my wife take more sessions, the alleged addiction would destroy my life. And he says the alleged addiction because Jodie decided that he'd had an addiction to porn, which he says he didn't have, and they weren't there to discuss that as it didn't exist, but Jodie was very sure it did. And she went on to discuss this addiction to porn with his church leaders without his permission, all for the cheap rate of $2,000 a month.
Whoa.
Wow.
She sounds like a top counsellor, doesn't she? It seems to me like almost every male client went to her in this sort of marriage counselling thing. She accused them at some point or other of an addiction to porn.
Having a porn addiction, yeah.
I think the person who's got some unsavoury attitudes to sex might be Jodie Hildebrand herself.
But it seems like she just needs to have a crux, where something where it's like, this is your problem.
She needs a crutch in her face.
And you need to keep coming back. So she needs to have something that's going to be the point of weakness, the point of the problem. So it's like, it's all just about money, isn't it?
Yeah, I
think
them
so. To continue to come back and to buy into like a series of, this is your problem.
I do think there's another element of manipulation and control too. So I think she and Ruby are well matched in that. So Ruby then starts to be a life coach in Connections with literally no qualifications to do so.
I just imagine if we were just having a chat one day, like, we've got a podcast. Why don't we just expand a little bit? Why don't we start a little cult? Why don't we? We could get people
take up breakdancing. I can do that.
At what point do these people go, you know what? They must have such grandiose ideas of what they're capable of and who they are and their own self, the way they view themselves, to think that they're going to be able to, attract a client base and then be able to guide them You know, most people would be like, I wouldn't mind the money, but I don't think I could pull it off. Not these guys.
Yeah.
I just think there's some kind of psychopathy about people who are so confident. Like, you should listen to this shit, right, that they talk about. They're just, you know, you don't want to be in distortion and you're the truth and the blah, 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 blah. And like, and you're listening to this woman, she's believing what she's saying, I think. You know, this is not a con.
Yeah.
It's just insane. And if your friends aren't like this, you've got to cut them off. If your husband doesn't like it, you've got to get rid of him. You need to understand the truth. And it becomes an extreme religious view over time. So it goes from, like, they become, you know, the one that we did, you know, the case I covered about
the lady.
No,
the lady one.
No, there was a lady in it, Laurie Daybell and Chad and Laurie. So Carla, they went to Hawaii. They killed their children. Remember the kids they decided the kids were -5.
Wasn't she Laurie
Oh, but they were also
they were also Mormon,
from Utah. Yeah.
They were.
Yes,
but I'm not going to say that's just a coincidence.
A coincidence, yeah.
Yeah, but they similarly got wrapped up in whatever it was that they decided was the way forward. And that ended up with the 2 kids dying. So it's a sort of similar situation. There are some parallels, put it that way.
There's also a difference, though, between like the science of psychology and addiction and all that sort of stuff and just someone's opinion. And it kind of sounds like they're just masquerading their opinion on all of this as some level of science, when in fact it's just we're just
it's not like
making shit up as we go.
Freud did that. Some might argue
I think,
that Freud's theories, a lot of them have been, you know, chucked out with modern psychology, but you call it a science.
Sure, but this is someone from, I think psychology, you know, people study a lot of it and they learn on the way versus someone who's just sitting there saying, I can do that and I'll just, you know, I've got an opinion on that, therefore I'm as good as anyone else. Therefore, if I sit there and sprout my opinion, that's valid. And to me, it's a real problem with things at the moment where everyone's got an opinion, they don't necessarily have knowledge.
That's my
and they don't necessarily understand.
Opinions are like arseholes. Everyone's got one.
Some are shittier than others.
That's right. I think you're right. And I think the thing that interested me in this case and why I started following it and why I had it on my back burner to do is this thing about social platforms making this stuff like it's accessible for people, including ourselves, to produce content and whack it up online, and anyone can listen to it and anyone can consume it. And I think, I could be wrong, but I think the reason Jodie was keen on collab with Ruby was because Ruby had this channel that was so successful, had a name, and would have brought a base of subscribers with her. People who were not anti her parenting or whatever.
Yeah.
And so, you know, she was a good cash cow, if you like, to drag into this. But it seems like a lot of this distortion and all of this, it's sort of psycho mumbo jumbo. Like some of it's religious, some of it's psychology. It's just, but it's really shit. Like when you listen to her go on and on, I mean, I turned off. I can't listen to it. You know, I just think, oh, lady, you're mental. I don't even know what you're talking about. You're just saying words. Jodie pretty much sort of takes up that leadership role / cult figure, you know, cult leader figure, because she's telling people how to live, right? So she's not just saying, she's like, I am the way of the Lord kind of thing. And she's saying, cut people off, you know, if they're in distortion, if they're not behaving the way you want them to, if they're all those things that I talked about what distortion is, if they've got addictions, if they fancy their husband, get rid of them, you know, all that sort of stuff. And including Ruby, who at this point asks Kevin to move out in July 2022. And she pretty much distanced herself from the 2 older kids who are now old enough to have left home, and so they have. And she's got the 4 of her own kids who are under the age of 16, I think. And she's told Kevin to piss off. And Jodie told Kevin and Ruby that they had to separate to save their marriage. That makes sense, doesn't it?
But to separate to save their marriage.
She's a really good marriage counsellor.
I mean, again, opinions versus any kind of science.
And Jodie was living with her, wasn't she? No?
Yes. So what had happened was Jodie, weirdly, had some of her own relationship issues. And so, yes, she was living with Ruby at the time that this happened. told
to
Kevin
believe.
to piss off, and then kept living with Ruby. Yes. How's that? So, Connections gets madder and madder.
Connections, I think, is the name of a nightclub, isn't it, in Perth? I'm sure it's a nightclub everywhere with the X.
Oh, there were,
Probably.
yeah,
It
there
might
was
be, is it?
Connections.
I think it is. There's
I've
a gay
heard of
nightclub called
Connections.
Connections, famous. I have to look it up. I think it is a famous gay
Yeah,
nightclub.
right.
Oh, well, I tell you what, if these women had known that, they would have been litigating.
I think it's really old.
Yeah.
It's in Northbridge, I reckon.
Oh.
Connections Perth,
Maybe
spelled
it's that
exactly
place.
like that. It is. Oh, no.
Is it at the
It's just-
Royal
it's
Hotel or
My
something?
mistake. It's just spelled like Connections. I don't know where I got it, I think.
So they've got this thing, couldn't quite understand any of this because it's all insane, but they call this thing Mums of Truth or Moms of Truth.
Moms of truth.
I'm not even sure at this point if Jodie is a mum, by the way. I'm not convinced Jodie's actually had any children. Anyway, they're teaching the principles of truth with a capital T. So they have these videos ranting about truth and distortion. Some might call that good versus evil or God versus Satan. So we start to move into the extreme religious side. We're right, and you need to follow us as we have the truth, the light. Jodie talks about how some people just won't listen to her, and she spent hours trying to explain the truth. She said, but they won't humble. I don't think that's correct English, and I'm afraid I get very distracted by grammatical wrongs. They won't humble. No, I'm sorry, Jodie. Anyway, based on that alone, I don't think she has the truth. If you don't agree with Jodie, she'll block you. Not that I'm bothered by that at all, but I guess some people just don't want to be blocked. So she bangs on about children, God and truth being attacked. People are being arseholes everywhere and they're not living in the truth. All she wants to do is love you as a sister. And if you are living in distortion, you have to get out of it and we can help you. And even if you're living in truth, you need to learn more from us. And to be fair, it's hard to listen to this stuff. It's so ranty and weird.
I'm struggling to listen to you about it. I can't imagine what they're like.
It, right? I precede this. So basically, truth, distortion, other people are bad, follow us, we're good, other people cause chaos, we can save you, blah, 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 blah. I recently decided to follow...
Excellent use of blah, 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 by the way.
It really is, blah, 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 blah.
That was well done.
Imagine having the time of your day that you could dedicate to listening to that.
She tears up at one point too. She's like, I've been trying to tell people, I'm trying to tell them I've got the truth and they don't want to humble. I'm like, I can't with your bad grammar. Okay, so I recently decided to follow a UFO sighting group on Facebook. And that, yes, this is
You did?
I did, yes. It's a little aside.
Right, yeah.
It is called research.
No, but the comments in that are fascinating, right? A lot of quite sensible people say things like, oh, that's a camera flare or it's an aeroplane. Even in some cases, the video is interesting. But then there are those talking about end of days and Project Bluebeam, which, if you don't know, is about an alleged plot to facilitate a totalitarian world government by destroying traditional religions and replacing them with New Age belief system by tricking everyone into thinking aliens have landed and taken over the world. The more I'm exposed to conspiracy theories and cults and ranting people, I just wonder how they have so much time on their hands, Swanee, to come up with and invest so much energy into these ideas.
That's right. They're not at work and having to work at hard days, labour, and then come home and just want to exactly.
You're like, oh, for God's sake, get a fucking life. So Jodie and Ruby continue to talk shit, and Ruby uses the platform to share her teachings on parenting, telling people about how she withheld Christmas presents from her kids to get their attention because Santa was the biggest thing that they loved. So this would be used to teach them how to be good adults. They chose to celebrate Christmas all about the birth of the Saviour and not any of the consumerist traditions we usually see. When she told the kids this, they didn't react much, and she described this as them being quite numb due to the choices they've been making. But I would say they were so used to the little cruelties their mother inflicted on them, they probably thought, who fucking cares anyway? I can't wait to grow up and get away from this bitch.
I think you're probably right. I think that would just be like it would just be,
another
the next, and another one in a long line of, manipulative little things that nothing but nice happens for them or gets taken away from them. Or
there was this quite disturbing video that I saw before she shut down 8 passengers, and it was that eldest child, the boy who had to sleep on the beanbag for 7 months, and
Greedy baby.
Yeah, and it was weird. There was something to do with yoga, and he's being asked to present something. You can see he's reading off a cue card or something. But he's sort of just saying, come and do yoga with us. It's going to be really nice. You can see he's so totally emotionally broken. No, he's broken.
Yeah. Okay.
And he's really disassociated, and you just think, what have you done to this poor boy? It's not right. Okay, so now we get to the come to Jesus moment of the story, which, as it turns out, wasn't set in action by armchair detectives or concerned neighbours or the multitude of viewers who had noted that things were off with Ruby and the family. It came about when her second youngest child, who was 12 at the time, climbed out of a window and ran to a neighbour's house and asked for food and water and for the neighbours to call the police. And this happened in August 2023. The neighbour called 911 and reported that the child was emaciated, bruised and sunburned. He had tape around his legs and he was hungry and thirsty. So as it turns out, he was
Things left in the beanbag.
Yeah, and this is the youngest son. That older son has moved out.
Yeah.
So the house...
She's had some time to work further on her techniques.
Yeah. So the house this kid was staying at was actually Jodie Hildebrand's house.
Oh, right.
And the boy told the police that Jodie had bound his wrists and ankles with a rope before she and Ruby used cayenne pepper and honey to dress the wounds that he had.
No.
The police arrive and they go over to the house where they find the youngest child, who was 9, sitting cross-legged in a cupboard. Apparently, she hadn't been seen by anyone for a month. Her head had been shaved, and like her brother, she was emaciated.
Oh.
She was so scared she wouldn't leave the cupboard for nearly 4 hours, and the police had to coax her out with pizza. It later came out that Ruby had shaved...
Would work for me too. Would work for me too.
Yeah, me too.
Yeah, very
Should
soft.
hit a Diet Coke and some pizza. I'd be like, I'd be Pat Mullinsing out of there. I'd be rolling out.
It later came out that Ruby had shaved her head as a response to her whining, and she wrote in a journal, if she's going to act sick, she can look sick.
Oh.
What?
That is... that is...
How very Gypsy Rose of her.
Yes.
Well, Dee Dee.
As per the playbook for this sort of case, Ruby had convinced herself and her two youngest kids that they were possessed by the devil and that all the abuses she was raining down on them was to save them. This included making them do physical labour in the hot sun, not feeding them, otherwise known as starving them, but she called it fasting, locking them in a basement, making them sleep on hard floors, tying them up, and on one occasion, drowning her son. She held his head underwater and covered his mouth and nose, seemingly as some sort of exorcism. And he's 12. Yeah. And the little girl, I think, was 9. Ruby had told her two youngest children they were possessed and they had to repent. So she made them work on this, around the time the kid actually does the runner, he's quite sunburned because she's been making him work out in the hot sun. And then, they did the cayenne and honey trick. The kids were very thin. The police noted there was tons of food in the pantry. There's tons of food in the house. They just weren't allowed to eat it. And, Ruby likes to use food as a means to control. The children were taken to hospital and put under the care of Utah's Department of Children and Family Services, along with the other 2 siblings who were underage. It seems that she centered her, weirdness about possession, whatever, on the youngest 2. I think the youngest 2 were probably acted out a bit more. That's probably all that is. Both Ruby and Jodie were charged with 6 counts of felony child abuse, and of course it made big headlines as they were both public figures telling everyone how to live, parent, and be Jesus-like. So the fact that they had both been abusing kids was just a touch contradictory. Isn't it ironic? Don't you think?
Especially when, you look at Ruby, she looks so middle America, good, beautifully groomed, well presented, looks like she'd be a lovely mother. It's quite shocking. They're not the picture of despair.
And the photos of them as a family earlier on, they look like the happiest, perfect Von Trapp family singer types, So the Washington County Attorney's Office in Utah accused both women of causing or permitting serious injury to the children via a combination of multiple physical injuries or torture, starvation or malnutrition that jeopardizes life and causing severe emotional harm. And they were facing 15 years in prison per count, as well as $10,000 fine per count.
Is that all?
Yeah, so that would have been 60,000 each. It doesn't seem a lot, I know. Initially, Ruby's statement were all about how great Jodie was and they've not done anything wrong and she's marvellous and she's just been helping us and all that shit. And possibly as a result of no longer being under her influence whilst in prison, the tone of her narrative started to change. She started to indicate that she had been influenced by Jodie. She said her intentions as a mother had been distorted, there's that distortion again, by Jodie. And so it was all her fault that she'd abused her kids. Having said that, it's fair to say that there were early indications of Ruby's parenting on the tough love side well before Jodie was on the scene. I'm assuming this change of heart was also intended to position Ruby as a victim, and as it turned out, she did take a plea deal and testified against Jodie. No surprises there. So the court case was held in February 2024, which I thought was staggeringly quick considering how long people remain in bail or remanded. This all like August 23 is when they get arrested, investigated. February 2024.
Very
Amazing.
Why?
Some of the evidence against the women came from Ruby's own journals, which documented her treatment of the kids. In these journals, she refers to the children as E&R. It's redacted because, and same reason I've not called them by name the whole way through because they're still minors.
Yeah.
She called them the spawns of Satan. I will not feed a demon, she
Bloody
wrote
hell.
in 2023 regarding her son. Writing of her youngest daughter, E is better behaved with Jodie. She likes to think she can still manipulate me. I gave her a pixie haircut. All her long hair is gone. No more distracting with her hair. Of her son, he told me he would rather have a glass of water than me as his mother. And I tend to agree with him. Fair enough. There's a lot more of it, but basically when you read through the journal and you picture the scenes, it's a mother denying her children food and water and then reacting when they flip between disassociated and numb to tantrums and screaming. So she talks about her kids stealing water. In one bit she says the boy drank from the hose, stole water, stole it from the hose when he drank from the hose. She knows this because he pooed himself and the stool is too watery to be consistent with the fasting she's had him on because she's starving her children. It's so gross. She even talks about dropping the kids off in the desert, and I don't mean like dropping the kids off at the pool. She's dropping the kids off in the desert, and she says that this is around the time that she and Jodie are wanting to buy a property out in the middle of nowhere where they can make the kids do hard labour. And she says, and the kids need a good kick from a horse and a cactus to run into. They need natural outcomes. Oh, what amazes me is she writes about how she's trying to save them from evil whilst being incredibly evil to them. And isn't it ironic? Don't you think? Washington County Attorney Eric Clark said of Jodie that the circumstances of the case were largely of her making. So he's putting it on Jodie Hildebrand. Adults with specialised training in particular are supposed to protect children. You didn't do that in this case. In this case, you terrorised children. What happened to these children and your philosophy in dealing with them, frankly, seems detached from reality or any objective standard of decency or even common sense. Take that, Jodie Hildebrand.
It's true, though. Like, I mean, at what point does common sense even play in this? It doesn't seem to be a feature at all.
No. I think like culty stuff, right? They've got themselves so wrapped up in their own lunacy that they can't see that what they're doing is horrendous. So with the body cam footage, the Ring doorbell of the neighbours, so there's some video, the kid comes up that you can see him.
Is this when they had gone in?
When the child first knocks on the door and asks for help. That's all captured on Ring footage.
Oh, right. Yep,
the police body cam is all captured when they went in and found the little girl and arrested them. Apparently Ruby was like, not talking about anyone without my lawyer, but Jodie was like, no, I've watched too many detective shows, you know, like, oh, fuck. So it's not surprising though. And the incredibly incriminating journals where she's written down, she writes about how she did that thing about holding his head under the water and covering his mouth and nose. She kicks them. She's this one section where she talks about the little girl and she said, oh, she's so all excited because she thinks her fast is going to end, her two-day fast. Did any of you do the 40-hour famine? That nearly killed me, right? She's got her kid on the 40-hour famine all the time. So she's got a 2-day fast. And she
minus sponsors.
Yeah, no, minus sponsors.
Without
and she says...
lollies and...
She wasn't going to get to go to Pizza Hut afterwards.
No barley sugar for you.
No barley sugar, that's what I was trying to think of.
Yeah. So she's got her on this fast, and then this girl thinks, oh, it's a 2-day fast, I'm going to get to eat. And then she says, no, I think you're naughty. You can have another 24 hours. You can't eat for another thing. And the daughter does what a 9-year-old will do and starts to cry and has a hissy fit. And she's like, that's the devil in you. And I'm like, no, you're horrendous. You're starving a child.
Freaking hungry. Yeah.
Fucking not right. Okay, so with all of that, it's not surprising they went down for this horrendous treatment of the 2 little kids, Ruby and Jodie. And by the way, I'm pretty sure she abused all of her children over the course of her parenting, but it quite specifically escalates with this pair. The oldest daughter reported her own mum.
They were just training.
Now, her oldest daughter reported her own mum. She knew that it had all gone too far. Ruby and Jodie were sentenced to 4 to 30 years in prison.
Sorry, 4 to 30.
Yeah. And
Here we go again.
The 40 is like you're up for parole, but it doesn't mean you'll get it. They both had 4 counts of child abuse against them, which they were sentenced for. However, the maximum time for consecutive terms in whatever court they were in can't exceed 30 years. So they were given the maximum time the court could give them.
How'd they plead?
Guilty.
I thought I'd seen somewhere that, I don't know, I could be wrong, so I'm sure you'll tell me, but I thought that like Ruby kind of did a 180 and so went, oh yeah, I'm really sorry. I shouldn't have done that.
Yeah, so she did this whole, Jodie's wonderful. Then she's like, no, Jodie's a bitch. And then she's like, I really feel sorry for my family. I'm really sad about what I did. But she also, in a custody battle over the children from prison, effectively implied that one of the kids had been sexually abusing other kids as well. She's a horrible monster, and I'm not even sure what that was about. It was almost like, again, it's like, it's something like he shouldn't be put in a home with other children. What are you doing, you crazy bitch? It was online. This court case was done online. I don't know why. And apparently it crashed the system because like 1,000 people tried to get onto the Zoom of the case. And so the whole court system crashed because they had too many people trying to subscribe to it. So I thought that was funny. So Ruby's eldest daughter, who's an adult now, had repeatedly tried to get the police and children protection services to check on the children in the past, and she was incredibly frustrated by the lack of traction. The arrest and sentencing has come as a major relief for her. Other neighbours also reported them for suspected abuse, but visits from the police didn't eventuate into anything. Ruby, as I said earlier, bragged that she gave them tips on how to be a great mum. Ruby's own sisters, who coincidentally are also parenting influencers, must be a thing, were similarly relieved, saying that the arrests had to happen. Yeah. As for Kevin, Ruby's now
Wouldn't happen on our channel.
No, correct.
Which, by the way, you can find if you Google.
Yeah. We're outraged.
Yeah, I didn't put their name in for a reason. You can Google that yourself, listeners, if you're interested. But Ruby's now ex-husband, Kevin, wasn't charged with anything. Ruby had kicked him out over a year before this happened, and he seemed pretty unaware that his youngest children were being abused, which is also not great. The kids, as of March this year, are in foster care, and Kevin is seeking to gain custody of them.
Where was Dad?
That's Dad. That's Kevin.
Exactly.
MIA.
Where was he?
MIA.
Exactly. He mustn't have been seeing much because I'm pretty sure if my dad had to come to pick me up and Mum had shaved my head.
You might have noticed.
Yeah. Notice. What happened
What's going on here? Did you want that to happen? No, Mum just said that I can't remember the reason why I'd been whining. I'd whining.
And so also something to do with she was using her hair as a distraction, so they cut it off. Yeah. Weird.
Did Kevin have any custody of the children when he moved out, or was it all...
I don't know.
He should have, because that's the only reason why he wouldn't have.
It appears that he was possibly as influenced by this Jodie Hildebrand as Ruby. And Jodie said, go to save your marriage. And as I understand it, Kevin didn't want to divorce his wife then. He has now. But he wanted to work on the relationship, and because they're Mormons too, right? So you're not really supposed to divorce. So he was committed to making it all work. They got 6 kids. So he's following the advice of this Jodie bird, who coincidentally replaces him in the home. And that happened in July 2022. And this abuse stuff happens they get picked up for a year later. And they move around. The kids are at Jodie Hildebrand's at this point somewhere else. So I feel like there's been a bit of moving the kids around a bit. I don't know where Kevin was for all that time. Kevin seems to have been going around being oblivious.
Well, I wouldn't surprise me if those two kept him
away.
away for as long as they possibly could.
Yeah.
Through their manipulation and talk of distortion and whatever
They probably
other
just made it really difficult
crazy
for
words
him.
they used.
No, the kids aren't here, or they don't want to see you.
Yeah,
so that,
that's
my
right.
friends, is the case of Ruby Franke and Jodie Hildebrand.
Ugh,
At least no one died.
Wow.
true.
Yeah,
So
it
to
really does
sentencing.
show how shit people can be, though, doesn't it?
There's just no reason, really. This is what I found when I looked at the
There's no
story,
reason.
I was
There's
sort of
no
following it a
reason.
bit. It's kind of like there was a big piece missing for me, which was like, why'd you do it? No, because we wanted to. You know what I mean?
Well, I
'Cause we
think
could.
because the kids were naughty on occasion. And
Yes,
I didn't like
that's not really-
anyone questioning my authority, and so I tortured my children.
Then it just gets so out of hand. I don't understand that. And then, then she does the full flip at the end. Oh, sorry about that. I shouldn't have done that.
I wasn't in my right
I was a bad
mind.
person. I was not right. Correct. Whoops. Apologies. Yes, I feel terrible. And I was like, oh my God, I can really entertain talking about that because I don't get it. You know what I mean? Sometimes when there's a crime and people have had like a breakdown or something's happened to them or whatever else, like, there's a
There's a
precursor
catalyst
to
or
something. You sort of
something,
go, like I said. But this one, I was like waiting for it to be revealed, and it was just never a big reveal. It was just like, no, we just felt like I'd have for shits and giggles at the time. It started off a little bit small, kids living on the beanbag. I got away with it for a night or two a week. All of a sudden, it's 7 months. Oh, can you believe it? It's like, it's very, very odd, I think.
And that's why I was kind of saying I think it just shows how shit people can be because it's not like they've been abused by their parents, I'm assuming. We didn't hear any of that.
I did read one thing that said that she made some scurrilous accusations about her parents, and her parents are like, we have no idea what's going on here. Nothing that she says, that nothing ever happened. We can't. I think they say something along the lines of, she's unrecognizable to us, in the way she's behaving. We don't understand this. Yeah. So her entire family, both her husband and her parents and her siblings, are all like
her influencing sisters.
Yeah, her parenting. I mean, do you ever do a little bit of I've got a bit of a problem with the boys, I'm just going to see what a parenting influencer says I should do?
I'd have to be honest, I don't think I've ever done that.
Of course
because I'm
not.
lazy.
Oh,
and because
also,
I'm probably quite reactionary, I just would have screamed at them and moved on.
The normal way.
Yeah, the old-fashioned way. I just get out. I'm not
lose your shit and away you go.
Trust me, there's nothing that a parenting blogger would have that I would have an appetite to recreate. I think no, we just
I haven't got time for that. I'm raising children. I'm too busy.
Go to your room.
Yes, exactly. Go to your room. That solves a lot of things.
Touching the dog.
Ruby should. I would if I had one. I've only got a beanbag.
Go to your beanbag. It's like a dog. Go to your mouth.
Get on your bed.
Yeah.
I was thinking at one point that I feel like people would be like the sentences they got. You would almost get that for a similar level of animal cruelty.
I think you're right.
In some circles, it doesn't sound severe for what those kids went through, but
I think it depends on the parole system now. Wouldn't surprise me if both of them are out in under 10 years because, they haven't got any kids to abuse in jail, so they'll have good behaviour.
It feels like it's a story that is it would have been a far worse story given a little bit more time, I think.
Could have been, yeah.
Yeah.
I feel like it's one that it's a good story in the sense that I don't know how it happened, but for once something was on their side and that child getting out and it being the child that was the first person to go to, and because it does seem to have gone through very quickly, as you said, Schmidty.
He'd run away a couple of times. I don't think he'd reached out for help.
Because that never seems to happen. Good on him.
Yeah, in the journal, it's kind of weird, but he does a runner and he leaves a note, and I thought you'd enjoy this, written in pebbles. And not on pebbles.
If only someone could have told him it can be done. You can write on the pebble, slightly larger, and you throw it.
So he wrote something like jail,
he wasn't to know.
Or jail, you'll find me there, or something like that, because He'd actually
Oh,
said to his mother, I'd rather go to jail. Like, she must have been threatening him with something like that. And he's like,
yeah.
great, fine, I'd be happier there. And so he went off, and I think he was just walking, and she writes in the journal it's sometime in the morning, and she gets up and she gets Jody, and they're driving everywhere, and they're praying to God to help them find the son, and everything's going to be okay. And it's all drama, drama, drama. And then they find him and they take him home, the poor kid. So this other time, when he finally does get onto the neighbours, it's daylight, it's daytime. So, yeah, and the neighbour, I remember hearing the 911 call, and I haven't heard it recently in the research of this one, but I remember hearing it on the YouTube when I first heard the story. The neighbour chokes up. The neighbour's really upset about how the state this kid is in. And I think one of the first responders were also quite upset at the state the children were in.
So they weren't just going to be sort of bulldozed and be gullible when they turn up with these women who go, oh, look at us, as if we were doing it like that, that's just parenting our way. It's our style. We're tough but firm but fair.
So to sentencing, what shall we do for Jody and Ruby? Well, I think shaving Ruby's head's a good start, because she's one of those people who, to your point, Swanee, she's very well put together. She likes to look good, and she's, as you said, she looks like this. In the early imagery, she looks like this all-together mother. So let's shave her head for a start. Yeah.
Oh, yeah, I think that's easy.
Uncle Festerer.
Yeah. Give her something to whinge about.
Light bulb and all.
She's going to whine. Let's give her something to whine about.
Yeah.
Yeah. God.
Look, as a parent, there are things that I've done and times that I've lost my cool and screamed at my kids and done all sorts of different things over the year. And one of the things that...
Did you make them jump into cactuses repeatedly?
No, I haven't done anything like that. They've never been starved. God knows. That wouldn't work well here.
You're not trying hard enough.
But there's definitely things that I've said and, reactions that I've had that I think, oh, God.
I wish I hadn't done that, yeah.
Didn't handle that very well. And sometimes I think what people do behind closed doors and what people do publicly are often two different things. Yeah. So perhaps for someone like her, before she had been caught necessarily, if it was all public, so all the stuff that was really bad, because at this point you're still only hearing what the kids said, what they could work with, right? Imagine the depth of depravity at different points where she was being super manipulative and telling them that they were, the little devils and whatever else it is. Imagine if you could really see that in real time. So let's say there was a camera on and it was accidentally, it was filming everything and it was
like
she's
in a Truman Show.
Yes. Yeah. Imagine something like that for someone who can't sugarcoat it, can't put on, because she looks a certain way. Oh, I mean, literally, she looks like sugar and light. She's so sweet and smiley and whatever else. Imagine if you stripped that all back and you just saw it for what it really was. So she was the evil one in the situation, and you could see it streaming live. So there was, without her knowing that, you know what I mean? So it's just her absolutely.
So it's not what she put up. It's not what she chose to put up. She's just
it's a fly on the wall. Yeah. The fly on the wall has exposed what she's done, so that you really do understand the rawness of her abuse, because we still have it secondhand. We still have it, all of the things. Yes, it's happened, but imagine if in that free flow when she's at her filthiest, just absolutely, being terrible to her children. That's the kind of thing that I would like someone like her to be exposed, where there's just no doubt, you know what I mean? You just see it for what she is in the flow, and you're like, whoa. I think if someone needs to speak to somebody about whether they're going to go to heaven or hell, maybe you're the biggest candidate for, going south. But that's the only thing I can think of in terms of a punishment for her, showing her for what she really is.
I think she certainly has had that public exposure, which is not kind of what she would have been going for. I mean, I'm happy with that. I think it's great. But the only thing about your punishment is I don't want the poor kids to stay on some kind of a... So maybe we have to swap out, they're not real children. She thinks they're children and they're just mannequins or something.
Reborn dolls.
I hadn't really thought of that.
Reborn dolls.
So
the kids aren't staying in that state. But I get what you're saying. It's all about public humiliation. She spent all her time humiliating those kids. How about she gets a dose of her own medicine?
Yeah. Yeah.
The other thing that would be good to add to that is whether we could wire her up to some kind of an empathy machine, so she could actually feel the emotions of her children as she was being this monster to them. Like you're on a 48 or 2-day famine and then,
God.
oh no, you're still behaving badly. You're going to starve again. Like, this is the person who's supposed to be your carer, your protector, all those sorts of things that
Absolutely.
should theoretically love you the most, and she's treating them like that. Those kids over time must have just, felt so alone, so terrified, no idea what the day was going to bring. And if you could somehow implant some of those feelings into her so that for the rest of her life, she's feeling the same horrible feelings that these kids would have felt.
Well, I also wouldn't mind just throwing her into maybe a swimming pool full of cactuses, because she did on one of the things she did was she or Jodie, I can't remember which, but they forced the little girl to basically run into a cactus repeatedly. They're just fucking idiots.
And honey and cayenne pepper for the wounds. I think that might.
I think it's terrible. But honey and cayenne pepper do have natural properties around things. But who puts it under wounds? Who does that? Who does that? Just get some
Well, it
Savlon.
seems like chili, like hot chili in your open wounds. Yeah. No thanks.
No, thank you. I know it sounds
But also
awful.
it's got a dyeing effect too.
Where the police went in.
Maybe there's a concentration where it doesn't hurt, but it sounds
I reckon it hurt. I reckon that's why it's mentioned. But when the police went in, they went down into this basement area, which was not a panic room, but it was like just this concrete, very bare area where the kids had been and locked up. I think the rope was there and some other stuff, and the bowl with the honey and the cayenne pepper. Yeah, that they'd been applying. So a bit of cactus jumping, a bit of shaven head, a bit of public humiliation, and an empathy machine thing.
With a dose of empathy.
I think. Yes. Take that, Ruby Franke and Jodie Hildebrand. You bad women.
Scrubbers.
All right. Well, terrible. Thanks for coming along the ride with me. And as we say every week, I miss you already. Ciao.
Ciao.
Ciao, ciao.
Ciao, bella.
Thanks for listening to Trial by Wine. You can contact us at trialbywine@gmail.com. Please rate, review and subscribe to Trial by Wine on Apple Podcasts or wherever you get your podcasts. If you'd like to support us, you can become a patron at www.patreon.com, Trial by Wine, or visit our website www.trialbywine.com to donate to us. Your support will help us cover many more cases and apply wacky sentences. We really appreciate you listening and hope you tell everyone about us. Our cover art is by John Christo and music is by Beauchamp from pixabay.com.